As we get started this morning, I want to remind you that the philosophy of ministry, the preliminary one, paper is due tomorrow by the end of the day, so don't forget to complete that. Make sure to submit that either through Blackboard or send it to me in an email. Either way is fine, but make sure to submit that. Also, don't forget that a week from today is the midterm. So be looking at the study guide, be preparing for that. And if you have any questions between now and then, by all means get in contact with me, or come by during office hours, or catch me before or after class. Whatever I can do to help you as you prepare for that. And so we have today, and then we have Monday, will be on the exam. So what we cover today and what we cover on Monday will be on the midterm. So if you want to make sure that you're keeping up with the information for these 2 days as well. Today we're going to be talking about commentaries and bibliographies, just kind of a general overview, talking about the uses of them, what they're good for, what they aren't good for, things to keep in mind as you think about working on your paper. Don't forget as well to be deciding on your topic. Soon you'll be required to submit what your topic is going to be. So don't forget to be thinking about that. As I've said before, there is a list on Blackboard under assignments of possible topics. And you will want to choose one from there, but if you're not interested in any of those, make sure to get in contact with me. Let us discuss the options. Make sure that there is going to be enough material for you to write your paper. So keep that in mind as well. So in thinking about commentaries, right, one of the sources we can go to when we're working on a paper, doing some sort of research, or preparing for a Bible class or some sort of lesson we're giving, commentaries are one of the sources that can be helpful to us. But there are a couple of things to keep in mind, a couple of things that you want to be looking for in a commentary and thinking about, is this a commentary that is going to be useful to me? So essentially, there are a couple things to keep in mind. First is thinking about any commentary as a guide to information. That it is going to be a guide to help you think through options about a specific text. If there's particular difficulties with a text, a good commentary is going to help you understand those options. It's going to help you work through some of those challenges. However, you should not look at a commentary. A commentary is not necessarily the solution to a question you had. And so you shouldn't turn to a commentary with kind of the position of whatever this commentary says, I'm going to accept. And that instead you have to think about them as a guide. Commentaries can be helpful in a variety of ways in pointing us in the right direction, providing us with the options about specific passages, especially those difficult passages, as well as providing us information that we might need in our study of a particular passage or a particular topic. On the other hand, commentaries have limitations, and so that can be a challenge. They're limited by the size, so that a particular passage you might be interested in might not be covered by a particular commentary simply because that individual didn't have the room to write about that topic, or it just didn't seem to be something that they felt they would need to talk about. And so the particular things that you go to a commentary for, a specific commentary might not provide you the information. And so commentaries are limited. Right? They're limited by a couple of things. First, Often there are restrictions on the size of a commentary. And like any book, usually the editor, the publisher, is going to encourage the author to stay within a certain amount of words or a certain page length, because they might think that a longer commentary that goes into everything might not sell, right? And so the publisher is really, one of the things they have to keep in mind is what is going to sell, what is going to be useful to people that are going to buy it. And so in thinking about commentaries, we have to remember, right, that they are limited, but they can be helpful. In thinking about which commentary or commentaries you're going to look at, there are a couple of things to keep in mind. A couple of things to think about in trying to weigh the options of, is this a good commentary that's going to be helpful for me in my paper, help me prepare this Bible class, help me prepare this lesson? A first side of that is thinking about what are some of the things not to look for, or what are some of the things that you should not keep in mind. And you should not base your decision on a commentary. Right? I'm going to use this commentary, or I'm going to refer to this commentary, or even I'm going to buy this commentary. You shouldn't do that simply on the author alone. Right? And so the only thing being, oh, I've heard of this person, I know they're a really good scholar in the New Testament, or I've read other things they've said, or I've heard their sermons on YouTube, and so I really like it, and so I'm going to buy it because it's this person's commentary. If that's the only thing that you're looking at, then that could lead you in, or kind of skew the information that you're getting. And so you shouldn't base it solely on who's the author, who's the person that is writing it. You shouldn't choose a commentary simply because they support what you're trying to say. Right? And so if you have a particular view on a passage, and you're doing a research paper for a course, you shouldn't only choose those commentaries that support what you said, right? That you should be open to other options. And so solely looking at, well, this person's going to agree with me, is not a good reason to select a commentary. You shouldn't choose a commentary that is solely focused on application or giving you a good illustration for a sermon or a devotional or something like that. And some commentaries are simply focused on the application of passages without careful exegesis. And of course, when we were talking about exegesis, we spent some time talking about the need to do exegesis first, understanding that original meaning. Now, if you only choose a commentary that is focused on what this passage can mean today, that's going to limit you, that's going to perhaps even distort your view of a passage. And if you're only looking for preaching help, that too is going to keep your preaching very shallow. It's going to not give you a depth that will then help the people that you are trying to speak to. So those are some things not to look for. What are some things to pay attention to when you select a commentary? Well, one thing to pay attention to is what type of commentary is it? There are different types of commentaries. Even though a commentary, of course, is treating the biblical text, right? And so there'll be a line or a passage or a verse or several verses from the text and then explanation, the author's explanation underneath it. There are different types. Authors approach the text differently. Some of them approach it from an exegetical approach. They are simply trying to exegete the passage. What was the original intent? Those types of commentaries will offer very little in the way of contemporary application. Their focus is simply on what did the text mean to its original audience. Very good approach to it, very helpful. Right? But if you're wanting to think through how does this apply, an exegetical commentary is not necessarily going to be the one that's going to help you. Another type of commentary is a theological commentary. The focus of the theological commentary, of course, is going to be on the theology of the passage. And so it's less about trying to give you the original intended meaning as what are the concepts, the ideas, and even the hermeneutics, the application. Now, a good theological commentary will also engage in exegesis, but the focus is going to be on theology. Another type of commentary we can refer to would be the pastoral commentary. A pastoral commentary would be focused on how would this be useful in the life of the church. And so helping church leaders take this passage and apply it somehow in their congregations. And so it is going to be more theologically focused, but the focus is on dealing with the people and making the text applicable to the people. And another type of commentary, the last I'll mention, there are a couple others we could talk about. The last I'll mention is the homiletical commentary. Homiletics refers to the practice of preaching. Right? And so the homiletic commentary is going to help preachers take a text and preach it. And so paying attention to what type of commentary is this, and what is it that I'm bringing this commentary for, right? If I'm looking to do a paper, a research paper in a textual course here at Faulkner, the pastoral commentary is probably the one that's going to be the least useful to you. Right? Not that you should refer to it, not that it might not provide you some information, but you're probably going to want the exegetical types of commentaries rather than pastoral. So what is it that you're looking at this commentary for is important in thinking about the type of commentary you're using. Secondly, the type of commentaries that would be most useful, and I put Greek text, but it should be Greek or Hebrew text, right, based on the original languages. Is this individual using the original languages, or are they focused simply on the English text? Now, just because it's solely focused on the English text, right, that there's no discussion of the Greek or Hebrew, or it's obvious this person has no knowledge of that, doesn't mean get rid of it, but you have to be suspicious in a sense, or you have to be judicious in how you approach it, because, again, sometimes people will add meaning to English words that the Greek or the Hebrew didn't originally have. So they will maybe distort a little bit the meaning of the text because they are focused only on the English. Additionally, those kind of texts would tend to be more the pastoral or the homiletical and less the theological or the exegetical. So pay attention to how they use the text. Are they only working on the original language, or the English language, or are they working on the original languages? A third thing to pay attention to when selecting a commentary is, do they provide options? Or are they solely giving you one understanding, particularly when it comes to difficult passages? Now, certainly, you would expect the author of the commentary to end up with one position. But if they're not giving you the options and not giving you the evidence that you can weigh for yourself one way or the other about these options, we'll talk about some of these examples here in a little bit, then they're kind of shortchanging you as far as the information that they're giving you. They're filtering out some things that perhaps would be useful to you, some things you probably would need to know if you're really serious about examining a passage. What might also be useful in thinking about a commentary is, do they talk about the differences in the manuscripts of certain texts? In general, a lot of texts, there's not much manuscript differences. But if you're reading a commentary, for example, on Mark, or you're reading a commentary on John, and they don't discuss the issues with the ending of Mark or the woman taken into adultery passage, then they are not giving you a full view of the issues that surround some of the manuscripts when it comes to the New Testament, for example. And so if they're not dealing with some of those things, where it is, especially where it is very critical, then it might not be the commentary that would be most useful to you. Does a commentary spend time talking about the historical background? This is another thing to look for, another characteristic that you would want to look for. When you pull the commentary off the shelf or you look it up online, does it have a good introduction section where it talks through who the author was, with the date, right, all those kind of introductory issues? Do they talk about the situation of the particular city or church or audience? And do they provide you information that is helpful with respect to situating these texts in the historical background? And if they don't, then it might not be the type of commentary that would be useful to you. A fifth characteristic to think about is what kind of sources are being used. What information are they drawing from? And this is going to be included in the bibliography. And we'll talk about the bibliography in a little bit. But do they have footnotes throughout the text, pointing you to other sources that you can examine that they have used for their argument? Do they have a bibliography at the end that has all of the works as well as other works? Or do they simply give you their view without any sort of additional information? If they don't have a bibliography, again, that doesn't mean you should immediately discount it, but it does kind of prevent you from doing your own investigation of this. In addition to that, well, we've already kind of covered this when we were talking about historical background, but that they would have a strong, introductory section, especially in some of the texts that are anonymous, like Hebrews, for example. If you're doing something on Hebrews, does your commentary go through the different options about who might be the author of Hebrews, presents you with the evidence in favor of one position, the evidence against it, the different options that are available as to when Hebrews was written? Was it written before the temple was destroyed? Was it written after the temple was destroyed? What evidence can be used to support either one of those? And then finally, do you get an idea for the author's position? Because, in many senses, it's helpful to have what the author thinks. Right? So they might be skewing it one way, just kind of leading you in a direction, but if it's clear what this author thinks, then that is helpful. But it's also useful in thinking through some of the information that they've provided. So in thinking about a commentary, right? So for example, commentaries are going to be a very important source for the paper you're doing in this class. How do you go about using a commentary? In some sense, it might be tempting to just pull a commentary off of the shelf or look it up online and just go to your passage that you're looking up and just read the section on your passage. If you do that, that's kind of stunting what that commentary can help you with. So the first thing you ought to do is read the introductory section, or at the very least, skim it thoroughly. Get a sense for some of the issues that are related to the book that you're studying, issues about the authorship, the date, etc. Because some of those might directly relate to your passage, and if you just focus on your passage, you've kind of left some information out. And so spend some time reading through that introduction and paying attention to where that author comes down on issues like the authorship, the date, who's written to, those kind of things. Secondly, most commentaries, especially exegetical commentaries, are going to give you an outline for the entire book. Right? So let's say you're looking at John chapter 7:53 through 8:11, the woman taken in adultery. A good commentary is going to raise some issues about authorship and those kinds of things, and then it's going to give you an outline of the Gospel of John, right? And how the different sections, how those things move together, how the text flows, so you can see how does my passage that I'm looking at fit in with the overarching message of the Gospel of John. Now, hopefully you've done a little bit of that on your own. Right? And so if you're studying 7:53 through 8:11, you should read the entirety of the Gospel of John several times so you have an idea of where does this text fit within that larger context, but also paying attention to the author of the commentary. Having looked at that, there isn't a need in most cases for you to read the entire commentary if you're only focused on a specific passage. Most of the time, that's not going to be helpful. But because those passages are in a context, it would be helpful to read some of the things said before your passage, some of the things said after your passage. And so, again, that sense of how does this fit in with the overarching message of the Gospel of John, especially in the case when we're talking about this passage that has some issues related to it. And then finally, paying attention to what does the author say about this particular passage. Again, if the author has not much to say about your particular passage, it's probably not a commentary that you really want to be using. All right? And so before you check it out in the library, or before you buy it, or before you waste much time with it, make sure that you're taking the time to say, is it really helping me with this particular passage?